So yesterday we learned about CPCTC, corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. We used two figures, two different triangles that were marked as congruent to identify the corresponding congruent parts, and then to write a triangle congruent statement. We're going to do something similar for the polygons that are shown here. A polygon is a figure made up of straight sides. We're going to identify all the congruent corresponding parts, and then we're going to write a congruent statement. So looking at this figure, what angle is congruent to angle P? Angle G, right down here. What angle is congruent to angle Q? F. Two arc marks, two arc marks. What angle is congruent to angle R? I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Angle E. Three arc marks, three arc marks. And then what angle is congruent to angle S? D. Right down here, angle D. Four arc marks, four arc marks. So those are my corresponding congruent angles. Let's look at corresponding congruent sides. They start us off with PQ. When I come over here and look at PQ, I notice that there's one tick mark on it. What does that correspond to on the other figure? GF or FG. Remember, order doesn't matter when we're talking about segments. All right, what about QR, this one right here? Segment FE or EF. Nicely done so far. What about RS? DE, right here, three arc marks, three arc marks. The other thing that I'm looking at here, did you guys notice how the other one also had three arc marks on it? How do I know if I've got two sides on the same figure that are marked as congruent? How do I know what they match up with on the other figure? Yep. I have two sides on this top figure that are marked as being congruent to each other. They both have three arc marks on them. And I see that down here. I see three arc marks and three arc marks. So how do I know which one matches with which one? If you have a situation like this, then you'll look at the angles. So let me look at the one that we're working on right here, this one. You guys told me that that matches up with this, and you're right. I want you to look at angle S here. Is there an angle that's congruent to S that's part of the segment that I have circled on the other figure? D. Four arc marks, four arc marks. And then R, how many arc marks does R have? Three. And angle E also has three arc marks. That's how I would match up exactly which segments are corresponding here. So RS corresponds to ED or DE. And last but not least, we have segment SP. What does that correspond to? What is that congruent to on the other figure? Yep, DG right here. Or GD. Last thing we need to do on this is to write a congruence statement. So we need to make sure to match up all the corresponding congruent parts. I'm going to match up my angles first. They wrote the name of the first polygon. They called it polygon PQRS. They started with the letter P. We said that angle P is congruent to which other angle up there? Angle G. So this name has to start with G. Then we have Q in the second position. What angle did we say was congruent to Q? Angle F right here. So F has to be in the second position. And then we have angle R in the third position. What angle is congruent to angle R on the other figure? Angle E right here. So GFE. And finally we have S here. What does S correspond to on the other figure? What's it congruent to? Angle D right here. So this matches up my corresponding congruent angles. But remember, this doesn't just match up my angles. This will also match up my corresponding congruent sides. Do you remember back here when we said that PQ and GF were congruent? PQ, first two letters. GF, first two letters. We've matched up those corresponding segments. And then we said that QR and FE are congruent. QR are the middle two letters, and FE is the middle two letters here. So we've matched up our corresponding congruent segments there. We've got RS and ED is congruent. RS is the last two letters. ED is the last two letters. And finally, we said that SP and DG were congruent. S and P are the first and the last letters here of this polygon statement. And G and D are the last two letters, are the first and last letter of the second polygon name. So we've matched up our corresponding congruent sides as well as our corresponding congruent angles. All right. So far, so good? Let's flip over to page 4 then. So now that we have learned about congruent statements and that they are matching up corresponding congruent parts, we are going to use that information to solve some problems. If you look here at problem number 4 up at the top of the page, the very first thing that I notice about this problem is that they give me a congruence statement. So before I do anything else in this problem, I am going to mark up the corresponding congruent parts. I'm going to demonstrate with the angles, and then I want you guys to mark up the corresponding congruent sides, and then we'll check your answers with mine. So right here, I see J as the first letter in this triangle name. What would that correspond to on the other triangle? Q. So I know that angles J and Q are congruent. I'm going to mark them as congruent. So here's angle J, and here's angle Q. Do we know how big angle J is? Look carefully.
Yeah, 24 degrees.
Yes, it's 24 degrees. So if angle J is 24 degrees, how big is angle Q?
24 degrees.
Also 24 degrees. All right, let's come over here to our congruent statement. Middle letter here is K. What would that correspond to on the other triangle? R. So K and R are congruent. I'm going to mark K as congruent to R. What is the other angle pair that I can mark as congruent? L and S. L is right here, last letter. S is right here, last letter. So angle L is congruent to angle S. Do I know how big either one of those angles is? Angle S is 34 degrees. So how big is angle L? 34 degrees. All right, I'm going to give you guys about a minute and I want you to mark up the sides that are corresponding and congruent. I want you to mark up the corresponding sides that are congruent. We did the angles. I want you to mark the sides. So what are the sides that I can mark as congruent? Give me one pair of sides. JK and QR. First two letters, first two letters. Here's JK. And here's QR. Do we know how big either one of those is? One of them. Which one? Yep. 12.9 is for JK. So how big is QR? 12.9. See if I can find a good spot to write that. 12.9 for this side here. All right, what's another pair of sides that I could mark as congruent? KL and RS, middle and last letter, middle and last letter. KL and RS. And what else can I mark as congruent? JL and QS. First and last letter, first and last letter. Do I know how big either one of those is? Which one? JL. How big is JL? 19.3. So how big is QS? 19.3. I know that that part of the problem takes a little bit of time, but it will make the rest of this so much easier that I highly recommend going in anytime you're giving a congruent statement, mark up all the congruences first before you try to do anything else with the problem. All right, let's look at what we are supposed to find. Part A here says find the measure of angle JKL. Well, here's J, down to K, over to L. So this angle right here, this is what we've been asked to find. What does that correspond to on the other triangle? Yep, angle QRS. Do we know how big that angle is? No, it just says 2y plus 2. That's not going to help me find it, is it? Is there anything that I can use on this triangle to help me figure this out?
Yes, you could add all the measurements that JKL has.
We're going to add only the angle measurements. Yep, we'll add the angle measurements because all the angles inside of a triangle should add up to how much? Should add up to 180 degrees. So I have the measurement of angle JKL plus, what are the other angles in that triangle? 24 degrees plus 34 degrees, and that equals up to 180 degrees. Perfect. So now I'm going to combine my two like terms together, 24 and 34, and I get what? 58. So the measurement of angle JKL plus 58 degrees equals 180 degrees. Then I'm going to subtract 58 degrees from both sides. What is 180 minus 58? 122 degrees. So the measure of angle JKL is 122 degrees. I'm going to go ahead and add that to my picture also. This is 122 degrees. And now we're going to go look at part B. For part B, we need to find the measurements of of variables x and y. Well, didn't I see a y already?
Yeah.
Where did we just see y at? Yeah, angle QRS. This right here goes to this angle. And we know that angle QRS is 2y plus 2. And QRS is congruent to what on the other triangle? JKL. So angle QRS is congruent to angle JKL, which means the measurement of angle QRS is equal to the measurement of angle JKL. QRS is 2y plus 2. How big is JKL? 122 degrees. So now I can use this to find y. I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. That gives me 2y equals 120. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 2, which means y equals what?
60 degrees.
Y equals 60. Not necessarily degrees, because y isn't an angle all by itself. It's part of the expression for the angle. All right, so there's y. We're also supposed to find x. Where's x? What'd you say? Segment RS, this right here. It's 5x minus 4y. What does that correspond to on the other triangle? KL. Do we know how big KL is? 9.1. Absolutely. So I have that segment RS is congruent to segment KL. So the measurement of segment RS is equal to the measurement of segment KL. RS is 5x minus 4y. KL is 9.1. I have a problem. This has 2 variables in it.
You know what y is.
We know what y is. We got lucky and found y first. If I tried to find x first, I would have to pause right here and go find y before I could finish this problem here. So I have 5x minus 4 times 60 equals 9.1. What is 4 times 60? So 5x minus 240 equals 9.1. I'm going to add 240 to both sides. So 5x equals 249.1. Then I divide both sides by 5. Do we get a whole number from this? No. Is it a horrible decimal? Not really. What do you get for x? 49.82. We're going to give all the decimal places on that one because it stops at 2 decimal places on the calculator. There is no reason to round if it's only out to 2 decimal places. Very nice work. Let's go look at number 5. What's the first piece of the directions on number 5? Draw a picture to represent the situation. The next thing I notice as I'm reading the directions is it says we need to find x, y, and w. And then I see this. It gives me a triangle congruence statement. How many triangles are listed there in that triangle congruence statement? two triangles. So when it says to draw a picture to represent the situation, I know I need to draw two triangles. So, I don't know, there's one. I'm going to draw another one just like it. Something like this. What should I call the first triangle? Triangle JKL. So JKL. And the other triangle? Triangle MNP. So M, N, and P. Before I do anything else with this problem, we're going to use that triangle congruence statement to mark up the corresponding congruent parts. What's a pair of angles that I could mark as congruent? J and M, first letter, first letter. So angle J is congruent to angle M. What other angles could I mark as congruent? K and N. K and N. Middle letter, middle letter. What else? L and P. L and P. Third letter, third letter. What about sides? What sides can I mark as congruent? JK and MN. First and second letter, first and second letter. JK and MN. What's another pair of sides that I could mark as congruent? KL and NP. Second and third letter, second and third letter. KL and NP. And then give me my final pair of sides that I can mark as congruent. JL and MP. First and third letter, first and third letter. So far, so good? All right, draw my picture, mark it all up using that congruence statement. And now I'm going to go through and take these other pieces of information. So like right here where it says JK is 24, I'm going to come over and add that to my picture. JK is 24. It says LJ is 15. LJ down here is 15. PM is 6x minus 4. PM down here, 6x minus 4. Then we have angle L. Angle L is 73 degrees. Angle K is 2y plus 8 degrees. Angle P is 5w minus 11. And finally, we have angle M, which is 24 degrees. All right. We're supposed to find X, Y, and W. Where do you see X in the picture? (6x minus 4) right down here. And that's for segment what? PM or MP right there. What does that correspond to on the other triangle? JL. And how big is JL? 15. Absolutely. Okay, so we have that segment MP is congruent to segment JL. So the length of segment MP is equal to the length of segment JL. So 6x minus 4 is equal to 15. I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So I get 6x equals 19. And then we divide both sides by 6. Does 6 go evenly into 19? No, so you can leave it as the fraction 19 over 6. Or you can write it in its decimal form. What is 19 divided by 6? 3.16, and then the 6 repeats, doesn't it? So 3.167 if I take it out to 3 decimal places. My preference is always that you'll take things out to 3 decimal places. 2 is the bare minimum. You need to give at least 2 decimal places on something that you need to round. All right. There's x. We also need to find y. Where's y? Up here, angle K. It's 2y plus 8. Well, that's part of an angle. Do I know how big the corresponding angle is on the other triangle? No, I don't know how big angle N is, so I can't use that to help me here. What'd you say? K and N are congruent, but because I don't know how big N is, I don't have anything to set it equal to. But I know how big angle L is, don't I? That's 73 degrees. Do I know how big angle J is?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Why? Because it's congruent to M. So J would be 24 degrees. So what can I do to find Y? Yep, add them all up and set it equal to 180. The measurement of angle K plus the measurement of angle J plus the measurement of angle L is equal to 180 degrees. Angle K is 2y plus 8 plus angle J, which is 24, plus angle L, which is 73. Set that equal to 180. And then we're going to combine our like terms of 8, 24, and 73 together. What is 8 plus 24 plus 73? 105. So 2y plus 105 equals 180. I'm going to subtract 105 from both sides. What is 180 minus 105? 75. 2y equals 75. Then I divide both sides by 2. Will that go in evenly? No. So I can either leave my final answer as 75 over 2, or you can write it in its decimal form, which would be what? 37.5. We still need to find W, but we are down to 1 minute, so we're going to have to wait and find W tomorrow. Your homework that you picked up on your way in the door is due on Friday. Friday will also be the day of your first skills check over this module. Homeworks 1 and 2 is where I will be pulling questions for that skills check. Anything that's covered on the homework that you submitted today or that is on the homework that you just picked up today is fair game for that quiz.